Hiya, my name's Beth. Today I'm going to be presenting my chosen poem, which is The Piano and the Drums by Gabriela Okara. My student number is 1095983. So, yeah, let's hope this works. This is like my third take. Right, so The Piano and the Drums by Gabriela Okara. So Gabriela Okara, he's a Nigerian writer, poet and novelist. He was born on the 24th of April 1921. He incorporated African thought, religion, folklore and imagery into both his verse and prose. He's best known for his early novel, The Voice, unlike my voice, which is kind of going. Okara draws... Oh, I've already read that, haven't I? Okara, to a large extent, taught himself how to read and write. He became a bookbinder after leaving school and soon began writing plays and features for radio. So this is the poem itself. I was going to read it, but I have found a Nigerian man on YouTube who is probably going to do a much better job than I ever would, so I'm just going to play that.
Today, Gabriel Okara's Piano and Drum is the poem. When at the break of day at the riverside, I hear the jungle drums telegraphing, the mystic rhythm, urgent, raw like bleeding flesh. Speaking of primal youth and beginning, I see the panther ready to pounce, the leopard snarling, about to leap, the hunters crouched with spear poised, and my blood ripples, turns torrent, topples the years, and at once I'm in my mother's lap, a suckling, and at once I'm walking a simple path with no innovation, rugged, fashioned with naked warmth of orange feet and groping at in green leaves and white flowers pulsing. Then I hear a wailing piano, solo speaking of complex ways, in tear-furrowed concerto of faraway lands and new horizons, with coaxing diminuendo, counterpoint, crescendo, but lost in the labyrinth of its complexities. It ends in the middle of a phrase at the dagger point, and I, lost in the morning mist of an age at the riverside, keep wandering in the mystic rhythm of jungle drums and the concerto. Do not hesitate to go to the comment section and like and click the link.
Okay, so it's obviously much more passionate and authentic than I could ever do, so yeah. So the poetic persona shows a contrast between life in African culture and that of the Western world. The setting of the poem dates from the advent of civilization to modern times. The central theme hinges on the effect of foreign culture to Africans. He elaborates using the effect of music on the poetic persona as an analogy. I can't read today, obviously. As an analogy. I'm just not going to try and attempt that. Could read it yesterday, can't read it today. The poem tries to emphasise the purity of African content before the interference of civilization, using the piano and the drums to emphasise this point. The poet perceives the discretion of the African way of life from the musical perspective. So the structure of the poem, it consists of 3 stanzas. The first 3 are telling the story of the poem, being used to represent the evolution of music and life within the culture. The poem has no consistent rhyming scheme, so it can be considered a free verse. The language of the poem is simple but vivid, as it paints a complex and intelligent picture in the reader's mind, and the mood of the poem is that of confusion with the mixing of the two cultures, being the piano and the drums being used as, So, stanza 1. In this stanza, the poet speaks about the sound of the jungle drums, a sound the poet believes is mystical, as there are many supernatural things that come with it. The sound of the drum creates agility, strength and quickness, seen within lines 3 and 4. Words used like primal youth, panther ready to pounce, leopards snarling about to leap, hunters crouched with spears poised. All these have very vivid uses of words, and they paint a clear, precise image in the reader's mind. All action is natural. The poet uses straight use of comprehensible words to draw the reader's attention. Everything sounds like it's in its natural state. Riverside, jungle, raw, fresh, not flesh. Names of the animals in the jungle, natural habitat. This stanza is the early primitive life where there were only drums, only African way, and no one knew any different. Stanza 2. So the second stanza shows us growth of the ages in comparison to a baby. In lines 9 to 11, in his mother's laps, suckling her breasts. The walk through the paths of the village with no other knowledge of life apart from the one he was born into. And this is like, so at once I am walking, simple paths with no innovation, rugged, fashioned with the naked warmth of hurrying feet and groping hearts, in green leaves and wild flowers pulsing. So now stanza 3. The poem changes as the poetic persona encounters different sounds from faraway lands. So this is when he's like, hang on, what's that piano? And he's getting a bit confused, you know. So then I hear a wailing piano, solos speaking of complex ways, in tear-furrowed concerto of faraway lands. This concludes when the primal drums and complex piano are brought together, as it is now the modern day where both things exist. The poem ends with the man still having conflicting issues and thoughts. The poem discusses the confusion that is created when Western culture mixes with African culture. The underlying message is that if you wish to be African, be it. Otherwise, live like the white man. So, themes. So the theme of the poem is the effect that the music has on the poet. The first stanza is the poet's response to hearing the jungle drums. We can say that he thinks of them as a primitive instrument, and he believes that there is a certain amount of violence in the rapid beating of the drum. Then in the third stanza, when he hears the piano, the poet is telling us the effect it has on him. We can tell he finds the piano complex and confusing as it represents a different culture and things he's not used to seeing. There's also the celebration of nature. So in stanza 1, the poetic persona is that of expressing the intimate details of the jungle drum, as he depicts his appreciation of the normal natural environment of things. No place like home. This theme is hard to identify, but when the poet explains the confusion from the piano and the drums blending, African lifestyle and Western lifestyle, he shows how some people can be comfortable at home with the things they are familiar with, and when new things enter, obviously it's a bit confusing, don't know what's going on. Living a double standard lifestyle. So the poet emphasises the confusion that comes from the bonding of the piano and the drum sound. The persona tells us that living two contradicting lives can breed confusion and complexities. and the cultural conflicts. The poem also shows that the two distinct cultures could not stay together, as any such attempt will result to conflict the norms, traditions and beliefs. So this is how the poem kind of impacted me and my thoughts and just kind of like what. So from this poem I've learned that every culture is different and that although we shouldn't try and integrate everything with everyone. Just like the poem says, drums and piano don't necessarily go together when it comes to music, but it's not saying that individually the drums aren't a great instrument or the piano isn't a great instrument. It's just together it's like and that the Western world shouldn't always interfere with foreign cultures. That's my bibliography. So yeah, thank you for listening. This has been weird,